last 30 seconds.
Whatever the next thing is, so you never lose any continuity in it.
Yes.
You know, so
I can't. Okay, thank you. Good evening. We're going to open the recess meeting of Monday, August 3rd, 2020. It's our intentions through Robert's Rules to start right where we left off with the health and safety action item that was on our agenda. That meeting will now be reconvened. Prior to turning it over to Dr. Perrin, there are some housekeeping stuff I'd like to go over that the board and myself received via email from the public that may help the community that's watching us this evening and keep some order to our meeting when we unintentionally step on each other because of the social distancing and a lack of the length of space and not hearing somebody. So I'm going to ask the board members that prior to any question, when it becomes that time, you would follow Robert's Rules and address your question to me. I'll recognize you by name, which will allow the public to understand and know who's talking, which will certainly make them happy. The distance is so far from my understanding that they can't put together a name with a face, and with the mask on at times, they're not able to even see that who's talking. I would also ask any of the administrative team as they step to the podium, unless you're there for an extended period of time, your first step up there, if you would address by name so that the community will understand who's talking and representing the administrative team. Another point of housekeeping is we did receive a lot of emails to date over the last 2 days. I was able to respond to the majority of them both yesterday and today. However, there was probably a dozen emails that came in late this afternoon where I have not been able to respond. I would hope that they're watching our live event and hopefully their emails are answered that way. I apologize, but I also have a full-time job beyond school board. And the last point of clarification, I felt the need, as a housekeeping more so, to correct any misinformation. I wanted to take this opportunity to publicly thank the administration, the teachers, and the staff. There was a misconception after Monday night's meeting that I believe, and I'm speaking for myself, that the board did not recognize the diligent, thoughtful, and overbearing work that this team did to present a reopening plan. There was also a misconception with the teachers. I want to publicly say the admin team, along with the teachers, participated in this entire process. They were never a roadblock. Any suggestion could not be any further from the truth, and that includes the union. I have not heard one board member in any of my private conversations mention anything different than what I just publicly stated. In fact, the administration team and the teachers of this district are some of the finest professionals, and this community is blessed to have them. And prior to turning over the meeting to turning it over to the board for a motion, I want to thank you again for all the work that you've done for this district and this community. At this point, I'd like to have a motion to remove the agenda agenda item regarding health and safety plan.
So moved. Second.
Question. Roll call.
Mr. President,
I'm sorry.
The motion, could you clarify that again? The motion is to remove the health and safety plan?
It is a motion to remove the health and safety plan that we discussed Monday, August 3rd. That will be turned over to Dr. Perrin to continue the health and safety plan. The item itself is not being removed. Is that correct?
For clarification, Mr. President, do you mean to remove it from the table?
I'm sorry, to remove it from the table. I misspoke.
So that it is open for discussion.
That is correct.
Thank you for the clarification.
And I understood that, Mr. President.
I'm sorry?
And I understood what you were asking for, so my moving that motion still stands.
How about the second?
Yes, second.
Question. Roll call. Kathleen.
Yes.
Carrie.
Yes.
Sylvan.
Yes.
Al.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Timon.
Yes.
Amy Beth.
Yes.
And I forgot to make notification. Ms. Hodges is still on a vacation, and Mr. Lynn is homesick, but they've joined us via telephone. Dr. Perrin, on the agenda item that was tabled or on the agenda item on health and safety, I'm going to turn over the meeting to you, please.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So on Monday, we presented information to the board through discussion. There was a question as to what it might look like to have more face-to-face instructional days with elementary students. So Dr. Lay is going to go through a short presentation to show what that would look like.
Good evening. Andrew? Thank you. Before we move into the specifics by grade span and the instructional delivery model, I want to clarify for the board and the public that our plan requires students to wear face coverings at all times, with exceptions when students are at least 6 feet apart and is required by law. All plans that we propose to the board have had that same expectation. So I apologize if that was not clear on Monday, but that was the expectation and is the expectation moving forward. Andrew? So we were asked as an administrative team to revisit the plan and present a model that more simulated the draft plan that we submitted on July 13th. I emphasize the draft plan that we presented. Oh, wait.
I'm sorry, Dr. Lay, we lost the two
Yes.
on the phone. I'm trying to get them back.
Yeah,
real
I
quick.
figured that. Yeah, I'll wait.
Please enter your conference number followed by the pound key. You are currently the only person in this conference.
I did. What was happening there is I thought it was a new, but she had all this background noise.
Hey guys, I've reconnected.
Thank you. I'm waiting on Timon.
I'm reconnected.
Thank you, Timon. I would just ask if you guys would mute, just because there was some background noise that was filtering through, and we were having trouble hearing Dr. Lay. People were sitting up close. It's just what the speaker says sensitive. Thank you again.
Yeah, there was some kind of override.
Okay.
I'm good.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Dr. Lay. And
Oh,
thank
that's
you.
fine. Okay, I'll start with the elementary slide that we're presenting to the board and the public this evening. At the conclusion of Monday's meeting and a reconvening of our team on Tuesday, we accepted the feedback from the board, which asked us to revisit the draft plan that we presented on July 13th to the board as a draft that preceded multiple meetings with stakeholders, focus groups, surveys to families, comments on surveys from families, staff surveys, feedback from staff at faculty meetings. And between that time and the time we brought our revised plan to you on Monday, we had changed it based on the information that we received. But based on the feedback we received from Monday, we went back to that plan and we revisited the 3 to 6 feet with the mandate of masks in the classrooms for students all day. So this proposal brings back to you K through 5 students in the classroom, Monday through Thursday. We wanted to share with you, instead of the average class size for elementary, the range of classes, as it was expressed that where there is the average of 21, with the data collected from the elementary principals this morning, we have a range of 17 to 29 students enrolled currently in our classrooms. We will limit the number of individuals who go in and out of the classrooms, and teachers will rotate to the classrooms, and meals will be served in the classrooms. So students will stay in a true self-contained classroom for their learning and their meals, and as much as possible, we will take them outside, as it indicates at the bottom. We will stagger those recesses to ensure social distancing and limiting contact between students. But we are even encouraging teachers, and would in any model, for any instruction that can occur outside, to occur outside as well. One change that we, as an administrative team, are requesting as what we perceive as the requested compromise to plans presented to you is that we sustain that remote learning on Fridays for these students. And the reasons that we are requesting a remote learning Friday, even for our elementary students, many of the reports that we have read and the information we have reviewed and from feedback from our focus groups have concerns that when the influenza strikes in the fall, as it hit us hard in our elementary campuses last school year, we were already canceling some events, putting in excessive cleaning in our elementary classrooms due to the impact of that. Combined with COVID, that there's a possibility that we would have to go to some sort of hybrid, if not full, remote learning again. Classroom teachers in an elementary school will have no time to practice and prepare for a remote learning environment if they're in the classroom full-time with students Monday through Friday. So that is the main reason that we're requesting that remote learning on Fridays. The additional time for students to practice their routines at home, we intend to enforce those routines in the classroom and have no expectations for students to interact remotely at home until they have evidenced mastery in the classrooms, which would make it look very different than the emergency spring remote teaching and learning that we experienced last year, or this past school year. So we have a very structured plan for that, and we ask that at a minimum the board consider affording us that opportunity for the students, parents, and teachers. So that's our elementary proposal. Middle school, which is 6 through 8, we're proposing that we continue with the blended model, alternating days A and B, and again, that Friday remote. Similarly, these students will remain in a classroom for all their instruction. Some considerations for time outside of the classroom will be considered based on the instructional delivery and the materials needed for unified arts, but the half capacity does allow 6 through 8 students to be able to eat in the cafeteria. And a similar proposal for high school, 9 through 12. Andrew, thanks. that the students would continue in this model. The only difference is students will not remain in one room because of the multiple electives and courses. It's really impossible to have those students stay together and have teachers come to them. So these students will need to leave the classroom to follow their schedule that they have. And again, that's an AB model. So this again shares, as I reviewed on Monday, what our plan would be for in-school and in remote. The difference now, it's a proposed model for grades 6 through 12. And I think we had one other proposed change here. Yes, thank you. Based on the delay in our ability to finalize a plan and communicate with families and get a response from them to indicate for us what specifically their intent is for all their students, we are proposing that the first day for students be August 31st, but it remain the 17th for teachers to give us ample time to prepare for remote learning, face-to-face learning, all the things that we have to prepare them for returning from a pandemic home quarantine environment with social emotional needs, proper handling of cleaning materials. So we are asking that the adjustment be made, and know that we then have made some adjustments in the school calendar, taking away a professional development in February and things like that to avail us more time up front. And I think that concludes the changes that we're proposing. One more, thank you. Oh, yes. So it was misrepresented in some media sources about what would be the difference between the Gettysburg Area Virtual Learning Academy, which is VLN, and then our teachers, Gettysburg Area School District Online Learning Options. The biggest misconception that was presented was Gettysburg teachers will not teach the GAVA courses. Those are provided by Virtual Learning Network, and they're provided by PA certified teachers, but they're not Gettysburg Area School District teachers. So I know some families were confused by that. Now I think that's it.
Dr. Lay, I believe I only have one question, and
Okay.
I'll turn the floor over to the board. I just wanted to make sure I summarize this right. On the K-5, the Friday off, would you agree that the two most important things that the district will be doing, first of all, it'll be remote learning, and that the K-5 didn't have a similar experience in the spring as did the high school with how remote learning was rolled out. So this would be brand new, not only to the staff, but obviously the students, maybe not the kindergartners because they're new, but the other ones didn't experience the same thing, correct?
Correct. And I was remiss, I had indicated at the presentation on Monday, but the Fridays would be direct instruction from a teacher. The teachers who are going to be in the schools, in the school buildings, potentially in their classrooms, providing direct instruction and connecting directly with students during that day. So it's not a full independent day for students to work.
But you would agree, and I believe I'm correct, that having not experienced what the high school teachers would experience, the 4-day concept, the teachers would build a rapport and have the ability to get the students and the parents acclimated with remote learning. Therefore, if, I hate to say the word, if we're shut down, we're that much further ahead of the curve, K through 5, and parents aren't scrambling trying to learn the new system, and same with the students. There's a face to the students with the teachers.
Right.
It's going to make a better, pleasant
Our goal
experience.
is to make students be as independent in that environment as possible by rehearsing those routines and practicing them in a guided format when we have them face-to-face in the classrooms. So, and all along we've proposed that we revisit this plan within 9 weeks, and that would take us into the fall, and we may learn from that there isn't an impact, and therefore we can return, but we just don't know.
In addition to that, I think when we spoke, it gives the custodial staff or the
Yes.
staff of the K through 12 buildings the opportunity to deep clean the classrooms, taking one further step beyond the daily sanitation. So it's really a twofold benefit
Correct.
On in light of all that, correct?
Right, because it's indicated those students will be, several will be eating breakfast, all will be having their lunch. They'll have their art and a lot of activities in those classrooms Monday through Thursday. So it would provide us that opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Lay.
You're welcome.
Mr. President, can I
may-
follow up a specific question you asked?
Ms.
Dr. Lay?
Soliday, go ahead.
Dr. Soliday.
I couldn't.
And I'm to address it to you, so I will address it to you so it can then be directed out. So I think I understand, but please clarify if I'm wrong, that in a socially distanced classroom, all the students are facing the same direction, and the teacher will be working with students on their devices while they're on their device to practice exactly what will occur on Friday. So there is this, I'm looking for the word there to describe it, a very similar model. You just happen to be in the same place, and
Correct.
then you move it over with a further distance.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Question?
Mr. President,
I'm sorry.
I have a number of questions that I would like to present based on reading emails since the meeting on Monday, or even going into Monday, that were not clarified according to a number of emails. So may I do that at this time?
Sylvan, I didn't hear the last part of that. I
Okay.
apologize.
Am I?
Yeah, I would just ask if we can.
Okay.
There you go. We got it.
Yeah, what I did was sat down and went over all the emails, tried to pull out things that we didn't accomplish on Monday that parents were frustrated with, and I would like to ask those questions and have the appropriate person answer them so that this meeting tonight will clarify issues that we have out there among parents.
You have the floor, Sylvan.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure who can best answer this, but one of the concerns was not understanding fully the 5 options that parents have coming into the first day of school and what they need to do between now and then to get their child either signed up for one of those 5 options, or what are those 5 options. So if you could handle that.
I think Dr. Perrin would like to answer that.
Sure. I think that, well, there'll be face-to-face instruction would be one of the options, and that different versions of that K-12, obviously. So we kind of consider that one option. The other would be a 100% remote online option with Gettysburg teachers. So that would be the second option. And the third option would be 100% remote, enrolling in the Gettysburg Area Virtual Academy, which is supplied through VLN. So those are really the main 3 options. So what would happen is if a plan is approved here this evening, then tomorrow afternoon an email will go out to parents with the information and asking them to choose and let us know their option for each one of their children.
Okay, so there really aren't 5.
3. Yeah.
3, okay. Number of questions on VLN, and they felt they needed more detail on that before they could ask to sign up for it or do that. I'm not sure who
They
can
can,
do that.
if they email the student services coordinator, Brandy Glenn Akers, she'd be able to respond to questions specifically about GAVA.
Okay, thank you. High school, sanitizing classrooms from one class occupying that room to the next class that comes in. How will that be done?
We did talk about that, actually explained that a little more clearly in our safety plan, but between students coming in and the materials being there, coming in using hand sanitizer, and then we will have disinfected with cloths so that students can wipe down their desktop and then reuse hand sanitizer so that if that bottle's been shared by others, and then when they exit the room, access to the hand sanitizer, and then the next student would come in and follow that same routine. So everything will be available for wiping those down in between classes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
What will recess look like at the K-5 buildings?
Recess will be outside. And
That's good.
actually, the elementary slide, Andrew, if you want to go back to that, it did reference a little bit about that. But again, if they access the safety plan that we also posted, some of the more specific details are in that 25-page health and safety plan about many things. But we indicated recess will be staggered to ensure social distancing and limited contact between students. Where we, in the past, have sent large groups of students out, that will be limited. Playground equipment will be sanitized between uses, and we will limit the sharing of equipment and provide hand sanitizer and disinfectant so we can wipe down materials in between use.
And who will be supervising recess time?
If you could just identify yourself, please.
Sure. Good evening, Board. Matt McFarland, Principal, Lincoln Elementary School. We're going to have numerous staff outside, as we typically have. Currently, our personnel outside hasn't changed from when we were monitoring large groups, as in before, and now that our groups are going to be smaller, we're going to actually be able to do that a little bit more effectively.
Okay, so they will be people who are experienced with those particular kids probably in many cases then.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. At the high school level, I just read something today, I think it was, that somebody in Harrisburg is talking about students who go 100% virtual will not be permitted to participate in sports. Don't know if you read that one.
I don't know what's happening in Harrisburg in terms of their schooling plans. I'm Jeremy Lusk, principal of the high school, by the way. I apologize. I can't speak to what you're referring to, but any student, whether they enroll in our GABA program or if they choose to go fully online with our Gettysburg area high school teachers, they have access to our athletic programs and other extracurricular activities.
So as far as we know, we're doing what we said we were going to be doing on Monday evening, that all our students, regardless of the program that they opt for, are eligible for athletics.
If someone, just to clarify, yes, and if someone would enroll in an outside cyber charter school, they're no longer eligible to participate in our extracurriculars,
Right.
unless they're willing to pay a fee to do so, if their cyber charter school doesn't offer that extracurricular.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
And your offerings in the way of clubs and activities, will they be curtailed in any way, or will you be able to conduct most of them?
We plan to offer as many as we possibly can, because, as I said on Monday night, that band is healthy and good for kids when done safely. And it's had to change in terms of what it would look like a year ago and what it looks like now, just in terms of safety procedures. Playing is outside. Some of that learning will have to be at home, uploaded for review, and class during the school day might sometimes look like peer reviews, one-on-one reviews, teacher feedback from virtual playing at home that is reviewed in class. But in terms of playing during the school day, it'll be played outside and sung outside. But to answer your question, we plan to offer as many clubs and activities and extracurriculars as we safely can.
Okay, thank you.
And that'll be determined individually by what, the particular club or activity is.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
What is our plan? Because I have not seen it in the form that made me feel good yet, and that's not a criticism. If we get notified that someone within a building has been tested positive, what is the procedure? Parents are worried about schools closing down. Kids that are in a particular class, will their parents be notified? How will that all fall together?
That's really that's one that's really well defined by Pennsylvania Department of Ed and Department of Health. Schools won't make those decisions in isolation. A lot of the direction will come directly from the Department of Health. As a matter of fact, even if we were notified by, say, a parent that their student tested positive, it's really the Department of Health's notification to us about that student that then triggers those conversations about what's the appropriate notification level given what Department of Health is aware of, and really they'd be looking over time at number of cases and those types of things, but they would make recommendations for things such as individual building closures or district closures.
Okay. The big question that I caught in a couple of the emails was liability and the school's liability with students, teachers, staff being found to have it. Are we liable because of any particular type of plan that we put in place more than any other type of plan that we put in place?
Defer, Bob.
That's a big topic, but the short answer is I do not see any significant difference in liability between the plans. Is there liability? Perhaps. But there are statutes and case law in place that minimize the liability for a school district in the first instance. And what is proposed here in this plan is substantially consistent with the guidelines that we're getting from CDC, Department of Health, Pennsylvania Department of Education. The Pennsylvania Department of Education, when it required school districts like ours to put together a health and safety plan and submit it to the department before you can open schools. Of course, as you know, they laid out the areas that you have to address and guidelines, et cetera. They use language in there referring to social distancing as 6 feet. They use language in there about masks following the governor's order. And the specific language that they use multiple times is to adhere to those guidelines, quote, to a maximum extent feasible. They also use language to the extent possible. So when you're dealing with multiple buildings and different numbers of students from building to building, even classroom to classroom, there's recognition by the government entities that each school district is going to have their own set of facts, and they're going to try and make $1 out of 99 cents the best you can. So I'm giving you a long answer, but the short is I personally, I could give you the long technical answer, but I personally do not see this district or any of the officials of the school district exposed to any more liability than you are on a normal basis.
Okay, thank you. And if you recall, on Monday evening, I made a comment about face shields and would like to again reemphasize that it would be my personal opinion that we should be offering staff members face shields, and for a number of reasons, obviously safety, but also for students to be able to see and hear better their teachers or whoever may be addressing them or they want to address.
My name is Tam McConaughey, Human Resource Coordinator, and yes, Mr. Hershey, I put out a survey to all staff several weeks ago asking if they wanted any extra protection, if they wanted us to provide face masks, face shields, plexiglass, or anything else in the personal protective kind of area. So I've gotten a lot of response back, and I'm working with our maintenance department on how we're going to design different plexiglass schemes for different staff. But yeah, we've already got the face shields ordered. We have extra masks ordered that we've had donated and purchased, so I think we're good to go there.
Thank you. I
And
appreciate that.
students, I'm sorry, and the same thing. I didn't do a survey for students, but we are prepared for that situation as well.
Okay, super. Thank you. That's it, Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr. Moyer, I know you were waiting patiently. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Sylvan, thanks for those questions. I think that does a great job of clarifying several issues. I would agree with you from the emails I read as well. I think you addressed pretty much everything there. My question, Dr. Lay, is just one, and it's for you. I just want to make sure I didn't dream this, that I actually heard this or read this as part of the presentation. On the remote Friday instruction, the students that are fully online on Fridays will have the opportunity to be able to be in a virtual classroom with other students that are that have chosen and parents that have chosen the hybrid selection. Did I dream that up, or is that a fact, or am I off base on that?
Well, so what, if I understand correctly, you're saying for our Gettysburg Area School District
For our online
students.
instruction that's being taught not by BLN, but by our Gettysburg Area School District teachers.
Right.
And again, I think the remote Fridays are a really good idea in case we do have to pivot one way or the other, like we had to do before. And I just think if this is the case, that's wonderful to keep those students engaged with their classmates as well as their instructors and so on.
And if that opportunity is appropriate, it would certainly be afforded to them. But a lot of times in 100% online remote, students are able to work at the self-pace. So
Right.
it wouldn't be the expectation, but certainly as opportunities are appropriate for students at a particular grade level or in a course, that could even happen on the AB days for
Okay.
students as well. So, you know,
Great.
and there may be opportunities where we ask them and invite them to come in for experiences at school.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. President?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, I have a couple of questions for Dr. Lay regarding the plan. So you mentioned for the K through 5, the elementary, that you would be utilizing as much like outdoor classroom time and instruction as possible. For when the weather starts to get inclement and a little not cooperative, will you be utilizing like gymnasium space and LGI space to kind of give them an opportunity to spread out?
Certainly, you know, we will look at opportunities that, you know, we may be utilizing some of those spaces for a more structured learning environment, because we also, in our small group instruction as it exists now, it's in very small rooms, and those students can't be distant. So, you know, the principals, once we have our numbers and what students and families are doing, we actually know how many students are going to be in and qualify for support services. We may have to use some of those spaces for what would typically be like a learning support classroom or a speech setting or reading instruction. So I can't ensure that those would be available, but certainly if they're available, yes.
Okay. Another question in regards to the plan that's being offered and floated tonight. So I would consider this like a soft open in order to get all students back to school. What is the transition look like in terms of going back to more of a full-time 5-day week face-to-face instruction? Are we looking like the first 9 weeks is going to have us identify what problems we may have? We'll obviously be watching for any coronavirus or COVID-19 positives and stuff like that. But like, what is the plan moving forward, transitioning out of the soft start?
And by that, are you referring to specifically elementary or middle school?
Just in general for the district.
Okay. Well, elementary, it doesn't seem like it would be a difficult transition because it's one day.
Right.
But certainly, as we indicated, there's many. The Department of Education has provided key factors to be monitoring how students are performing academically with academic progress and how we're monitoring that. We would also be monitoring students' social emotional well-being. We would be monitoring student participation in a remote setting, and seeing how responsive students are being. So there's many markers that we will need to look at to measure the success of our program. Our students are being compliant with our health and safety plan. And so as we monitor all those things, we could look at returning students on an alternating Friday, as was proposed by the board. We could begin to phase students back in more gradually. It's bringing them back more days to brick and mortar so that we can see how successful we are as we bring larger groups in to our building. So there's many things we would have to look at to determine which way we go, if we need to go more remote or if we potentially can come back brick and mortar, face-to-face more.
Okay. My last question is, so the 6 through 12 instruction is effectively going to be 2 days a week with 3 remote. There's a lot of concern, specifically with myself as a parent, but there's a lot of concern among other parents, is the 2 days a week that they're going to have in person, face-to-face with the teachers. Are they going to be focusing more on what I would call the core classes, like the geometries, the calculuses, biologies, and trying to coordinate some of the easier courses to do online remote? How are they looking at that?
So just to clarify for myself, is easier more like, are there electives?
Right, electives, I guess.
Okay. Nancy, do you want to speak to that a little bit? What you were thinking about with some of the remote experiences for students, and maybe Jeremy?
And to clarify my question too, is what I guess specifically, like if you're taking a calculus or a geometry, I think there'd be more benefit in having that face-to-face instruction versus if you're maybe doing a music or something that you could participate in a Zoom session and still kind of get the same, if that makes sense.
Sure. Nancy Herb, middle school principal. I'll speak to middle school since I know high school will be very different. We are definitely prioritizing our core classes. We've even simplified our schedule to add more minutes. So we're normally on a 60-minute core or 60-minute period for our cores, and 6th grade we got them up to about 80. 7th and 8th we're closer to 72 because we're really simplifying, and we're doing unified arts, but we're gonna try to focus them a little more on the remote day and really give as much time, face-to-face time on the day they are there, and really, I think, lean on our hybrid model. I'm hoping it doesn't feel very different because we're going to be face-to-face doing direct instruction in small group when they're in class, and then what we normally would have done in collaborative or independent will be on those remote days, so that it doesn't actually feel very different for the kids. We've cut out our first period a little bit. It's shortened. We're going to focus a lot on the social emotional every day. There'll be check-ins. There'll be, that mental health piece. And then obviously supplement with the enrichment and the support. So it's not that any support that needs to happen will happen. We'll pull kids out for interventions. We'll pull for enrichment if we need to. So that's kind of an overview of the middle school and what we're doing.
Jeremy Lusk again, high school principal. At the high school, it's much more difficult to do what they could do at the middle school in terms of putting extra time focusing on the course, because a schedule is a schedule. As one student's in biology, another student is in engineering, and another student is in foods. And our class periods will be mostly 75 minutes. Our lunch period, because we had to grow it, as I explained Monday night, into 4 lunches just out of safety, will actually be about 85 minutes. And that'll be helpful because there's transition time as you're prepping for lunch and coming down from lunch. There's kind of lost focus time. So 85 minutes might actually serve those teachers well that operate during the lunch periods. Our skinny mod remains 40 minutes, and that's where most of our music classes are. You mentioned band specifically. But looking at the potential success of remote learning from the spring, though there was plenty of times where there was not enough engagement and success, I'm extremely confident knowing that Many students who need more face-to-face time and choose to come in every other day will get what they need from the teachers as they construct instructional models to serve kids well. There were plenty of kids who still performed in their AP classes with eventual 5s on AP tests this spring. And it was a difficult challenge for the kids in a block schedule who had AP courses condensed to a spring semester and only had 40% of the face-to-face time in before they were sent home for complete remote learning, as compared to students that were in traditional schedules in other schools where they had 75% of their curriculum done because they started in August or September as opposed to January. And when students were engaged, they could succeed. The instruction was there. And it'll be extremely beneficial to have kids in the building every other day to make sure, as our teachers can make sure that they are engaged and can operate successfully. You can structure a lesson to watch this, read that before you come to class tomorrow, and after you leave and operate remotely the next day, you're going to work on this, reflect on that, work on this project. Again, I'm confident that our teachers, no matter whether it's a core class or an elective class, which are just as important to a lot of students, the students and the teachers can find a lot of success in what we're planning to do. If that answers your question, Mr. Dickerson.
It does, thank you.
Okay. Anything else while I'm standing here?
I have no more questions.
Thanks.
I do want to follow up, though. I mentioned before, and Carrie had asked me to emphasize, we didn't get a chance to teach kids how to learn remotely. They got sent home and they didn't get to come back. So much of what we are planning and preparing for is teaching teachers and teaching students how to work in a remote environment before we have changed the expectations. We had to have realistic expectations, not having had the opportunity to teach the skills. You don't just flip a switch and expect it to happen. We had to have tremendous grace, not to mention many families were dealing with very difficult situations in the home. We can prepare students to learn in an environment, but it's a skill set we have to teach. We have to explicitly teach. We have to have them show us that they know how to do it. That's the plan. No matter how many days students are in or out or what days of the week it is, we have committees working on what specific skills do we have to teach students so they can be more successful and independent, kindergarten through 12. They can do it. We just have to teach them. We didn't have that opportunity in the spring. No district did. And we have very many families who've expressed concern if we brought all kids back face-to-face every day for their safety as well.
Thank you, Dr. Lay.
You're welcome.
Mr. President, I do have questions.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Dr. Soliday. That is an important point. Around July 13th, the number of emails that came through, I stopped counting, around 250, and the majority were in favor of the safety measures that the district had put in. The number of emails that have come out at this time period, this first week in August, I did not count. But again, I see the trend of the majority of those communications want clear social distancing of 6 feet. And there's value in those emails that are addressed to the entire board, because then every single board member sees the same communication, as opposed to if it's addressed to a personal email account or a personal cell phone only or Facebook Messenger, then only that recipient receives it. So I think that's an important point, is there has been a lot of community support for the very diligent plan that was put together. I have a question, Mr. President. It was stated earlier that there was consensus by the board to revisit the plan. How was that consensus determined?
I apologize. I didn't completely hear you.
There was a statement made that there was consensus by the board to ask the administration to revisit the plan, and this is why we have a new plan, how was the consensus determined?
It was stated here Monday evening multiple times.
I'm sorry, how was it determined there was consensus? That would be by vote?
No, I believe that you heard the administrators and you heard the board members on Monday evening indicate that they wanted to table it and they wanted to look at a different plan. At that point, go ahead.
The vote was to table the discussion.
Correct.
The vote was not to look at a different plan.
I don't believe the district looked at a different plan based upon the feedback that they got Monday evening.
From how was the consensus determined? That there was a need to ask the administration to revisit the plan.
Nobody asked the administration. They came to us. They said that they would go back and look and see based upon the information that was given on Monday evening, is my understanding. If you're asking me if there was a board poll or a board vote or something private, the answer to that is no, and you can poll the entire board.
And there wasn't a public one either. There was not a public vote to determine consensus. When a board votes and the majority of votes then determine the consensus of the board, because the board then is to come together and stand behind that vote, even if they individually disagree.
Well, I think no, I don't agree with you. I think what happened was, and not what I think, I know what happened, is the board represented their position on numerous issues. The administration recognized that the plan that may or may not, if presented in the same way, whether it passes or not passes. And at that point, the administration took it upon themselves to redo a plan. And I believe Dr. Perrin can address this also. Again, I'm not sure if you're asking if there was a private vote or more in violation
I'm
or
not asking
something.
about a private vote because I expect it to be a public determination.
But Dr. Soliday, there was a public vote this evening, and you voted for it.
To untable.
To table it, that is correct.
No.
So what you have tonight is you have a new plan being presented. The old plan still could be there. You tabled it, we tabled it, and at some point, if there's a motion to adopt or accept the particular plan this evening, then the board would vote on it. I'm not sure if that's answering your question, because I'm a little confused as...
Okay, so just to clarify, that there was not a board vote to ask or show consensus that the entire board was asking the administration to revisit the plan.
That's correct, and there was no vote or consensus on Monday evening for them to present us a plan. They're required to present the board a plan for reopening. They presented a plan on Monday evening. Based upon the feedback from the board, Dr. Perrin can jump in at any time. He met with his personnel, and they are presenting an alternate plan for our consideration.
I can jump in now.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I think that through the discussions on Monday evening, we presented that initial proposal. We listened to the discussions as an administrative team, and there seemed to be questions in terms of what would be the possibility of elementary, specifically K-5, having more face-to-face time. So the next morning, the admin team got together and said, what would this look like if we tried to increase the face-to-face time for elementary, really to show what that would look like as an option.
Mm-hmm. Understood. And just clarifying that there was not board consensus to ask to revisit, because it is very possible that not all board members would have agreed to change the plan.
Is that directed towards me? And I'll
No,
recognize
that's not. It wasn't actually a question. It was just a statement. That part. And yes, I just want to clarify. I did vote to untable, to open the discussion again. But it was a statement that was made earlier that I wanted clarification on about consensus. I do have additional questions. So in the Monday evening presentation, Mr. President, there were some clear statements that social distancing at 6 feet was not possible, I believe, is at James Geddes and Franklin Township. So my question is this, I'm thinking that, let me clarify one more point. With the span of 17 to 29 students, 17 to 29 students in a classroom, I'm thinking 29 is specific. Is there a reason why 29 or not 30 or 28 was in that?
So I met with the elementary principals this morning to verify that based on the enrollment of the grade level as it is today, what's the lowest populated class, which was 17, and the highest populated was 29.
Okay, so 29 and trying to get somewhere between 3 to 6 feet social distance. Who's sitting in the coat closet? Who's sitting in the doorway? Who gets to be the student that's furthest away from direct instruction?
So I don't know that, but what I will say is that once a survey is distributed, if we then learn that there may be changes, but we're preparing to address class sizes as it is today. And I know it was asked of us how many students have left the district to date. So on the 4th, we pulled that data, and this data is in our information system based on the fact that a family has contacted another entity, and they have that entity, that public school, private school, charter school, has requested records from us. That verifies that a student is unenrolled. So as of the 4th, I think that was just yesterday, two students at the elementary level went to cyber school, 2 middle school students for cyber, and 1 high school. So a total of 5 students have left Gettysburg School District to go to cyber. Homeschooling, 4 elementary, 1 middle school, so a total of 5. Private school, 2 elementary, 1 middle, 2 high school, so 5. And students that just moved away from the district is a total of 10.
Thank you for getting back to me with that.
You're welcome.
I have another question, Mr. President, and this one, I believe I'm understanding that there is some reduction of instructional time in the face-to-face setting. One, because of sanitizing. It was more clear, especially for students who were following their individual schedules, the amount of time it may be momentary, to do that throughout the day. And then at, say, the middle school, to try to capture more time for core. There's a required number of minutes and whatnot that are assigned to core subjects, and core subjects, just to be clear, math, science, reading or English language arts, and social studies. Okay, so just want to clarify, core, I understand core, but all others may not. Would that perception be true, that we are reducing in some form the amount of instructional time even in the face-to-face setting? Or in the face-to-face setting, not even?
Before I say yes, I'm just looking for, I don't know that, so lost instructional time is, if you're suggesting, for preparing students to transition into the rooms. I mean, elementary's staying where they are. And the middle school students are staying where they are. For most instructions, teachers are going to be rotating. All middle school students will stay in one classroom. Teachers will transition. So some of that would be teachers transitioning in, but then that would be as opposed to students in the hallways transitioning in and out of the classroom. So our intent, though, is absolutely to provide breaks for students. And, we indicate at the elementary level, like more recess time and, even time to just intentionally have a brain break, as we did in our remote learning environments in the spring, so that students aren't just, sitting there, because it's going to be long days in one room. And they're scheduling recess at the middle school level. Now, high school students will still get to have that planned movement, we refer to it as, because they'll transition to their classes. Does that answer your question?
It does, and
Okay.
I think that you also are addressing that piece of students will be at their station, whether they're in a hybrid setting.
Yes.
Or whether a desk provided by the school in a school building, they'll be at their station, and that there will be breaks that are built in so that there can move, can have release of intensity of the situation,
Right.
and that's built into both. My last question is, one of the goals of the Department of Ed is that equitable learning pathways are created for all students. And we have two different settings. Some students may be preferring to attend remote. Some students may be preferring to attend face-to-face, or families may be preferring their students in those modes. Can you please talk about how you will create those equitable situations for the English learners? And I know, Kelly's not here tonight, but I saw a lot of communications about students with disabilities and 504s and concerns along that line, those lines also, about equitable learning opportunities that address those groups.
Correct. Actually, our team met. We have created a guidance document for our district administrative teams to use with students who are English learners, students who have 504 plans, students with IEPs, GIEPs, and it guides the questions of, thinking about these things, what environment, what structure does that need then require? Because there's the direct instruction that's provided by an English second language teacher for students, but then there's accommodations that they need to have when they're in the regular education learning setting. So we have made some general decisions. Students who are beginners, who are just coming into the U.S. or are still at a low level of English language proficiency, up to our sort of like our emerging's not the right word, our level 3s, where they're just in that transition. We are going to go to the default of asking permission for those children to come daily. And then we will work with them to access digital resources that are translation dictionaries and things like that, so they can access that information at home. And again, we weren't really able to model those tools so much when we had to send them out in an emergency remote learning. But there's lots of resources, and things are coming available at a rapid pace to help us design instruction that'll meet the needs. But yes, we are considering each situation uniquely.
And so a lot of things you're talking about, and a lot of the questions that are coming from families, the community, even board members, are really tied to an instructional plan.
Correct.
It may be mentioned briefly in a health and safety plan, because that's really focused on the disinfection, the social distancing, and is what I'm missing, mask wearing, and aspects related to that, and everything that's a part of a student or a staff member's day. So you do have a separate instructional plan that you're working out details with each of the buildings that will be communicated going forward. But our discussion about the plan is on the table is really health and safety.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kathleen, you may have the floor, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. If you cannot hear me, please let me know.
Actually, I am having trouble.
Mr. Lusk, move back. All right.
Thank you, Jeremy.
All right. Safety is seriously everything to me, so thank you for moving. All right, I want to go back first for some clarification on what we're actually doing here tonight. So I recall Monday evening that a plan was presented to us, a plan that had been worked on for several months by smart people who really know what they're doing. And we had a 3-hour robust
Just are people that are on the phone, if they're asking if you can just a little closer to the mic because they couldn't hear you.
I think if I get any closer, I'm going to eat it.
I know.
I mean, I'm not sure I can.
I'm just relaying the message.
My husband will think it's funny if people think I'm a soft talker. All right, I will do my best. I'll use my teacher voice. All right, so again, I'll repeat. So Monday evening, we convened here for the sole purpose of voting yes or no on a plan to reopen our schools, get the kids back safely. We had a 3-hour robust discussion full of questions. I came myself with a lot of questions that were answered to my satisfaction, and thank all of you who answered them. So here's where I'm a little bit confused, Mr. President, and I mean this genuinely. I'm confused. So we tabled the vote to give members who wanted more time. So the vote was tabled to tonight, and I recall asking before we actually voted, is the intent to vote on this plan on Wednesday? And I was told yes. Okay. But then this evening, we're here, and again, my gosh, thank you, Dr. Perrin, Dr. Lay, all of you, who I apologize if you received mixed messages from this board, because this board did not have a vote Monday night that asked you to bring us back a revised plan. So I genuinely apologize if we gave you mixed messages, and I really thank you for taking this upon yourself. I do have some questions. Dr. Lay, in this plan that that you brought forward this evening, elementary students, we're looking at 17 to 29 children in a classroom. They will be kept 3 to 6 feet apart.
Correct.
And my question is really simple. When we look at all of our elementary buildings and every single classroom that these 17 to 29 darlings will be in, is that feasible?
For 3 feet?
3 to 6 feet, 17 to 29 students.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Some would be 3.
Some would be 3.
Right.
So some would be 3, so they'd be between 3 and 6.
Correct.
6. Mr. McFarland, did you want to address this? Okay.
He has a different setting, so in his building it's less significant.
Yes, right, the old high school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But yes, 3 to 6.
All right, thank you. I do
You're
think
welcome.
about our older buildings, and I was super concerned about that. So I have another question. So back to this plan that, again, I'm sorry if we gave you mixed messages. I came tonight prepared to vote on the plan from Monday evening. So first I want to say thank you so much, Dr. Perrin and everybody, on the updates that you did make to the health and safety plan based on my questions. And again, they were all answered to my satisfaction on Monday evening, so thanks for that. All right, I really have, at this point, but there may be more, I have one question about what we saw tonight in the PowerPoints. So on Monday evening, you, and by you, I mean several of you in this room who spoke, you convinced me that a strong rationale for the hybrid schedule was safety. After all of my questions were answered to my satisfaction at that meeting, I was prepared to vote yes on the hybrid AB plan. Instead, we voted to table a vote on that plan. So we're here tonight, and you've given us this revised 4-day schedule plan before us for K through 5. If I vote no on the revised 4-day schedule, it is because I have been successfully convinced that the hybrid schedule is safest for all. There is no such thing as 100% safety in this world, and I understand that. So to the point, please convince me that the 4-day schedule is as equally safe as the hybrid schedule. And if you cannot convince me, I'm looking for honesty. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lay. I want to come back to both Dr. Soliday and Kathleen's question that's been asked several times now. I'm confused. There is no motion on the floor for either plan. You are free this evening to make a motion on the plan that you heard on Monday evening. If it's seconded, it will go to question, it will go to vote. If somebody else on the board wants to make a motion on a particular plan that the administration, based upon the feedback that they got Monday evening, wants to make a motion on this plan, if it's second, it will go to question and it will get a vote. So when we talk, and everybody's listening, nothing is on the table right now. They have presented two distinct plans. No motion's been made on any of them. So it would be no different if we walked away tonight without a vote. That doesn't mean that this plan is gone. Yes.
Mr. President.
Again, I am confused because I believe we had a motion and a second to discuss the hybrid plan. We then had a motion and a second and a vote to table that discussion on that plan. And please teach me, do we not have to do something with the plan, the hybrid plan that has been motion to accept and seconded before we can go to another plan, what's been presented tonight, before we can go to a vote on that?
Actually, I'm going to ask our solicitor to comment on that. I'm somewhat confused.
Well, I'm only going by what I thought I heard on Monday and my recollection, and what I do recall is that the topic was introduced and there was a lot of discussion, but I do not recall a specific motion that was put on the floor and seconded to adopt the particular plan that was presented on Monday. So near the end of the Monday session, when there was a motion to table, probably technically that was not a correct motion because there was no main motion on the floor. And I don't know if you recall or not, because it was late and we were all tired, but I think I said that I thought the sense of that was to table the discussion and to then defer it to this reconvened meeting. So the way I've been looking at it all along is that under Robert's rules, we really have had a prolonged discussion but no specific motion. If that clarifies anything.
May I follow up? I've been on the board for 3 years, and we can't have discussion unless we move to accept the item, the action item, and it's seconded, and then we can discuss it.
And that is the general procedure under Robert's rules. However, you're a small body, and there are many informalities that occur in a small body so long as people do not object. And perhaps one can go back and say that somebody should have insisted on a motion being on the floor before having the protracted discussion, but that did not happen. And I don't view that as affecting in any legal or other material way the final outcome, which I would suggest is when you've gotten to the point that someone wants to make a motion, that there should be a specific motion to adopt a specific plan. Or you could even make a motion that you adopt the plan that was presented Monday evening with these 2 or 3 changes. Now, I'm not saying you should do that, please don't, but it's within your power to do that. But I would suggest that there would be a motion to adopt either Monday night's plan or tonight's plan. And then when that's seconded, as the President's indicated, there would be further discussion if necessary and then a vote up or down.
And Mr. President, and that is where the confusion is, because our procedure has been for any action item, there's a motion, there is a second, and we move to discussion. And that is why there is confusion as to tabling the discussion and what we're voting on, or will be voting on in momentarily or at some point tonight.
I completely understand that. I probably take a different outlook at this. Every board member had an opportunity when they voted this evening to remove or change that agenda item. And I look at it from the perspective that every board member walks in here to do what is right, maybe technically sometimes strained, but our job, in my opinion personally, was to listen to the plan Monday night. The administration, do not want to speak for them, took the feedback. They came in this evening to present a second plan for our consideration. There's been no motion on the plan for Monday night. There's no motion on the plan for this evening. So while technically it was not done properly either Monday night or opened up this evening without anybody raising an objection until now, I still think we're moving forward. And I'm going to open it back up for any other questions from any board members.
I would just make a comment that, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't know you had I apologize.
Right. I may have forgotten what I wanted to say there. If the whole board doesn't understand the way the discussion was set up and that it was going to be different than any other board actions that we take because it's listed as an action item, it becomes very difficult then to know what it is that the board is to do, what their next actions are. I just want to just make that statement. So it's important that every board member understands the intent of an item that's listed as an action item or is an informational item, which is another way that information is there's a signal to the board that there's not a vote on an information item, but there is a vote on an action item.
I understand
that. So the directions of what was, or the expectations of what was to happen on Monday night were not clear for all. And I'm going to say for myself. They were not clear to me what we were doing in a different way.
I understand your point, and you know, moving forward, I would have appreciated the input a lot earlier on, but I'm going to move back to technically the sole purpose of what we're doing here this evening. We have, and I'm not going to belabor this, we have people waiting on our decision. We've heard two different plans, and I do appreciate it, but I'm going to open it back up to any questions to the administration on the plan here.
I was just going to make a comment that I remember things the way that Mr. McQuaid passed them along. We had a very important topic. Our superintendent, with his administrative team, gave a great presentation, answered a lot of questions for us, and I don't think getting hung up on technical, literal interpretation of Robert's rules is a productive way to run things, and I think, again, it was a presentation, and we were allowed to ask questions, and in my opinion, we did absolutely nothing wrong, and I look forward to voting on one of the two plans tonight, very soon.
Mr. President,
Mike,
I would just like to follow up and follow up on what Mr. Moyer, Dr. Moyer just said. We have hundreds of parents waiting on a decision for us, and we had a lengthy discussion on Monday night. And this presentation, whether it was an action item or informational item, is no different than things we've discussed on this board before, where we have discussion and debate. The athletic plan, for example, when they brought it to us and we discussed and had questions and concerns, the administrative team takes notes, they make changes, and we move to accept that. I think we owe the public a vote, and everyone's here on a Wednesday night. The administration did an amazing job to try and get kids back to school, and that's why we're all here, not to push an agenda or anything else. I think we can discuss the semantics of procedural actions at another time.
Mr. President, I agree that all stakeholders are waiting for a vote, and that it's just, it's important for everyone to know what is next. I mean, really, there could be a race to make a motion now because there's two plans. And whichever motion gets there first is the one that could get the majority vote first. That's unfortunate way to run a meeting.
well, we're going to disagree.
Could I, Mr. President, make one comment?
Yes, Sylvan.
When we sat here Monday night and we voted 7-2, to table the vote on the plan that was presented to us Monday night. And I'm going to use Carrie's line. This is me talking. I left here, and if I was a member of the committee who put the plan together and saw that it was tabled so that there was not a vote Monday night, I would see that as an opportunity to make any changes that they might want to make because it was now Wednesday night's meeting. Bob, when a motion to take action is tabled, what does that mean about that motion?
Well, I mean, I can't speculate what it means in the minds of the people who are dealing with it or hear it. All I can say is that procedurally what it means is it sits in the ether until either it never gets recalled, so it sits out there forever, or it gets recalled by a vote, and that's what you did today to revive it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, I still want to understand what we're doing here tonight.
I'm
Can you
sorry.
hear me? Yeah? Okay. So when we untabled the item this evening, it effectively became an action item again, correct?
I don't know how else to explain it. I already explained what my understanding was. What I suggest to this body is that someone at some point, perhaps soon, make an actual motion.
Well, may I make a motion? May I make a motion to vote on the plan that was presented to us Monday evening?
Why would
The motion should be either the motion should be in the affirmative to act on the plan to adopt it, rather than just vote on it, to
Thank
act
you.
to adopt it.
I would like to make a motion to act to adopt the plan that was presented to us Monday evening.
I second that.
question? Hearing no question, roll call.
Actually, may I ask another question of Dr. Lay or no?
Motion's been made.
No, well, if a motion's made, the discussion can
Yeah.
and should follow it unless
Correct.
unless there's a motion to end discussion.
I have one question, and Dr. Lay, you may answer it, or you can defer to someone else.
Okay.
And I'm looking for honesty, and I know
Sure.
you are an honest person. We are a well-intentioned group of people up here. We want what is best for our students, our teachers, our staff, and our community. That's why we ran for this office. But we are not studied experts in the administration of schools. We are experts in a lot of things, but not that. We look to you, Dr. Perrin, Dr. Lay, and your team as the studied experts in our district. And my question for you is pretty simple, I hope. This plan that is before us to vote on this evening, the plan presented Monday evening, do you prefer that plan over the one you showed us this evening?
And I actually had that conversation with particularly our elementary principals this morning because it impacts them the most. And they said they prefer the plan that was presented Monday. They feel it is the safest plan for students and staff to re-enter schools. Because we, as an administrative team, were directed to develop a plan and questioned relentlessly why we wavered from our original draft on the 13th. And I indicated when I opened tonight, that was a draft plan, but many, many, many resources were taken into consideration, which brought us back to a plan that we presented on Monday. And we were told the board would not support a plan that required students to wear masks all day. So we presented a plan to you that would allow our students to be 6 feet apart and be safe and still wear masks, but we could at least ensure 6 feet apart. And then we were directed on Monday afternoon that that plan was no longer going to be supported. And so we came with our plan, and we stick by our plan. I worked with our administrative team yesterday to develop a plan because we need to get an approved plan. So we will honor this plan, and we can make this plan work for our students and staff if we know there's going to be compliance with students and families that they're wearing masks. So, that's still an unsettling conversation with teachers and administrators about how much we can enforce that and how much that's going to interfere with instruction and our day and discipline. But if this is the plan that the board is comfortable approving, we can be comfortable with it as long as we get support that it follows the safety guidelines of students wearing masks, and that will be all day in those classrooms when we have students that are less than 6 feet apart. Those exceptions cannot be made if they're not 6 feet apart, and they will not be 6 feet apart in the elementary classrooms.
So I've heard you correct. So if I've heard you correctly, in your expert opinion and the expert opinion of your team, the plan presented Monday evening, the AB plan, is the preferred plan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions?
Actually, I have a comment for Dr. Lay. I completely understand what you're saying, that it'd be the preferred plan. The safest plan, obviously, would to have everyone, stay at home.
No. We don't believe
I'm
that.
just hear me out. The safest plan would be everybody to remain at home and stay 6 feet apart, but everyone understands the importance of children getting back to school.
Yes,
and the plan on Monday night statistically may have been safer, and we would all prefer that, but the impact it would have on the community and the children might be more negative than the potential risk of having the children wear masks and stay as close to that 6 feet mark as possible. And you guys showed your true professionalism and adapted because you understand the importance of getting kids back to school, and you understand the impact that it's going to have on the community. And we are all trying to do the best that we can to make sure that we can get everyone as close to as a normal functioning environment and doing what we need to do for the families and children. And I applaud you for that. Thank you very much.
It's important that we remember that we're in a national crisis and a pandemic. So this is not a plan that we would even think about doing.
Right.
If the circumstances were different. And this is not a plan that we're asking for the board to support for the rest of the school year. We've asked for support to go from no students and teachers in school, everyone at home, to a gradual reentry to allow us to monitor how safely we can do that, and then build capacity one way or the other based on how that works. That's what we presented. We are here tonight with a revised plan that we will honor and we will serve. But we brought this forward because we need an approved plan, and we compromised as we were asked to do, and that's what this plan is. So yes, we will do this, sir.
Mr. President.
But it's more out of the understanding that this was a compromise so that we could get an approved plan, never that we didn't want students back in school. That's our goal.
Mr. President, I do have a couple of follow-up questions.
You're recognized.
Thank you. And I'm just going to put them out there. I know you're at the mic. I don't really mean to address them to you. Anybody can answer them, even Dr. Perrin. So things that were concerning in the spring when we were in 100% remote learning, child abuse, and the lower numbers of students who have been identified for child abuse, that number went down, and that's a concern. Is there additional training that is planned or will be planned to help educators identify students who may be in an abusive situation, even if they're in a remote learning situation?
Yes, and some of those guidances we provided for students as the remote, when we were alerted that schools were closed for the rest of the school year, obviously that became a concern. But we had contact with our students, even in a shutdown. So, we had social workers going out and checking. We did things to stay connected to those students, because at that point we would have already known students that we were considered at risk. So certainly the rotating days would afford us that opportunity as well. But, yes, there were guidance was provided that we shared, and there's additional guidance that will be part of our training when we return on the 17th with teachers.
Thank you. Sandy Weichert has been amazing at figuring out solutions for students who are experiencing food scarcity.
Correct.
And I imagine, even in a hybrid plan, she would come up with some creative way that every day that students could have an opportunity to have that free and reduced lunch, even if it was something as creative as they were dropping them off at bus stops for students who were in the remote learning center. I'm not going to say that's the answer, but she has been amazingly creative at making sure students have access
And the
to food.
administrative staff and teaching staff have supported that as well. So yes, we actually got a communication from Sandy today. We finally got information about how that has to look for students with their remote days. But yes, we would be able to provide meals to students, breakfast and lunch, including weekends, on the days they would be going home. And as a member of the Roofs Harvest Board, we were communicating this week and have a board meeting scheduled in 2 weeks to design a weekend plan for students in a hybrid model.
You referenced Ruth Harvest. I know that you also work with other social organizations and have, I did hear you say you were waiting for an approved plan to continue this conversation. Could you possibly list a few other social organizations that you connect with or others connect with who help our students who are at risk?
Yeah, well, we have outreach to the Misty Ridge community, and we had a Zoom call with the director there to help us connect with those families and get their feedback on the plan, but then also address ways we can utilize the community room at their location to help students on the off days, whatever the outcome is. I know the middle school in particular has a strong connection with Foursquare Church, so we've been in contact with them. I'm on a Adams County food sourcing community that we communicated throughout the COVID and continue to look at ways to source food for our families. The Ready to Learn Committee through United Way and Head Start so that we can ensure, and actually got an email from a early childhood director in the community who said she'd be happy to work with us to ensure we have access to and ways to communicate to families resources for families.
I believe also one of the roles that you have is that you communicate with child care providers, preschools.
Yes, and that's through the United Way, the Ready to Learn Committee, and then my service with the Head Start Committee.
And so there could possibly, or already in the works, that you are planning communications of how to support students who are in childcare in remote learning days.
Correct.
And I know also the creativity of the administrative team, that they cannot tell people what to do for childcare, but they're probably going to provide some ideas of how to create pods that help each other solve childcare issues. And my last question, it was in the spring, it was a new experience for all. And there may have been students who did not engage, chose not to engage, struggled to engage, and it may have dropped off. Maybe they were engaged at first, but that engagement dropped off. What protocols have you discussed about students who are struggling to engage, for whatever reason that may be? How long before a district member reaches out, whether it's to the student, to the family, both, because at different levels, we're talking about accountability. Your high schoolers, yes, there's going to be that reaching out. How long do they go before the first contact is made specifically about engagement or struggling to learn or whatever it might be in those?
Right. In the spring, we were checking that weekly, and communications were made at that point. If we had not heard from a child by the end of that instructional week. So in this particular case, they'll be coming in face-to-face, and I've had some conversations with teachers about how, if students are not engaging in the remote days, now we have this wonderful opportunity when they're face-to-face with us to have conversations and provide more guidance and structure, because that, resiliency and self-regulation are very difficult, even for some adults, to transition to. So we really have to teach self-regulation and provide more scaffolds for those students, like checklists and maybe some more offline learning opportunities. So, but that was a very aggressive behaviors on all teachers and administrators in the spring, and it certainly would continue. We just feel like we'll be in a better position coming back because we'll have time with them face to face as well.
And I just want to end with, I thank you all who are part, whether you're in a stakeholder group, as a community member, as a parent, as students, I don't know all the types of community or organizations that were a part of those stakeholders, but certainly people who responded to surveys, for the time and energy that went into drafting this plan. I have read more than 26 school districts' reopening plans, and I can guarantee you Gettysburg's is the most thorough. Most of the plans are 2 pages. That Gettysburg's was far more detailed, with much more stakeholder input. 2 pages is the minimum end, and of course, there are others that go beyond that. But I have seen 2-page reopening plans, and I can't even imagine how you run all of the functions without the details that you have gone to, the great lengths to think through every possible aspect that's tied to an instructional day. And I thank you for that, for valuing our staff, the students, all the employees, and the community at large. I thank you for that.
Mr. President, could we please make a vote? I know our solicitor recommended a motion for a vote. Our solicitor recommended that we did several minutes ago.
Yes, we actually have a motion on the floor on Monday night's reopening plan. It has been seconded. It went to questions. Are there any further questions before I do roll call? Roll call on the motion to accept the Monday night's reopening plan as presented. Mike.
No.
Carrie.
Yes.
Al.
No.
Timon.
Yes.
Kathleen.
Yes.
Tim.
No.
Amy Beth.
No.
Sylvan.
No.
And I vote no.
Mr. President,
You're recognized, Mr. Mike.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the revised plan presented by the administration this evening.
Second.
Mr. President, I would like to second that motion, excuse me.
I'm sorry, Amy Beth, you could not hear. It was seconded, but I appreciate you joining in. Question on the motion to accept the plan that was presented here this evening for the district's reopening.
Comment?
Yes.
Not a question, but a comment. I also would like to thank Dr. Perrin and his leadership team and the members of the community that were on the focus groups and all the hard work that went into that. And believe me, I'm not saying that Monday night's plan was a bad plan. I am not saying that at all. But I do believe as board members, a big part of our responsibility is balancing the needs of the school with the needs of the community. And with the people in my neighborhood and all the email messages and other messages that I've gotten and people that I've surveyed in a number of different venues that I've been in, I believe tonight's plan, and I really appreciate the tweaking that our administrative team did with this, does a better job of balancing those needs overall, and I'm convinced it can be done in a safe environment. Thank you.
I would follow up pretty much to what Dr. Lay had said. There is no way any plan that's accepted here tonight after reading all the emails and being in the community is going to be acceptable to all. But I want to emphasize that the district and the administration and the staff has given alternatives to families if they're not comfortable with one of the plans that is voted on tonight. A plan that reopens is not turning our back on other families. We've provided the opportunities, and quite honestly, I heard several times about the staff and teachers. Well, there's 22 of them that texted me after Monday night's meeting, and they wanted a different plan. So their voices also carry just as much as the teachers that may not be comfortable with the plan. I understand that. It's not personal. I echo Al's sentiment that I believe that we sit here and we say how professional we are and what a great school district we are. I have every bit of confidence that if there's any issues with any reopening plan, that the district administration will come to the board, present that problem, and this board will diligently change whatever plan it needs to do to make sure that the students and the staff are successfully safe and that we're providing the best educational opportunity. Having said that, are there any other questions on the motion on the floor?
Yes.
Tim, and you're recognized.
The plan for tonight, the change in plan, does that meet with the CDC, Department of Health, and the guidelines set forth by our administration? Is our administration comfortable with this plan? Because if not, then we become liable if something happens. So I guess my
Tim,
question
I think that Mr. McQuaid talked to liability earlier. I think that what we've been able to show with grades 6 to 12, we're still hybrid, Tim, and so like there would be 6 feet there, which meets the guidelines. We would be 3 to 6 feet at the elementary, and the only way to do that is with a very strict usage of face coverings and being able to distance when you can. So that's how we can make it work, and we will make it work if that's what the board approves.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're within that liability range.
Are there any
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions on the motion on the floor? Roll call on the motion to accept the plan presented here this evening. Timon.
Yes.
Amy Beth.
Yes.
Al.
Yes.
Carrie.
No.
Sylvan.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Kathleen.
No.
And I vote yes. Motion on the floor is passed. The next order of business from a recess meeting is the school calendar.
Right, so we'd be approving a school calendar that would change the start date for students to August 31st.
I move to accept.
Second.
The motion has been seconded. Question on the motion to put the start date of the calendar change to August 31st for the students. Roll call. Mike.
Yes.
Carrie.
Yes.
Al.
Yes.
Timon.
Yep.
Kathleen.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Amy Beth.
Yes.
And I vote yes. That motion passes. I have one moment.
If I just make one more before we recess.
I'm going to turn this back to Dr.
Mr.
Perrin for a brief
President.
moment. Yes.
I didn't hear my name called, but just to make sure that the vote is correct, I'm voting yes on changing the calendar.
I did call you, did I not? Yes, right before me. Or no? Between Carrie and Mike, and I have you down as a yes.
That is the correct vote, yes.
Dr. Perrin.
I just wanted to wrap up by saying that folks, like, we all go into leadership roles because we want the opportunity to work and work well with others and meet common goals and be able to get there. And I think that what you learn over your career is that anybody can lead when it's 76 and sunny. And I think that I just wanted to thank again the administrative team, not just for kind of sticking with all the changes that came from different organizations in the state on a week-to-week basis, but doing all of that while still keeping the day-to-day things alive. So thanks for rising to the occasion, and appreciate all the effort. Now the real work begins, and I'm confident that we will all rise to the occasion for our families and our kids. Thank you.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
This meeting is adjourned.